Well, this morning we are continuing on in Genesis, and by the way, we're in Genesis today. We'll be in Genesis tomorrow, and then tomorrow next week. That's how Sunday. That's how pastors think. They just think in terms of Sundays. It's tomorrow. Next Sunday, we'll be in Genesis again, and then we'll break from Genesis for the fall. And for some of you guys, it's for me because we look at Genesis every fall. And it seems like, man, we just jumped back in. I go, I know, but it was 11 weeks. We were in it 11 weeks. And so we'll be back in it next Sunday, and then we'll break, and we'll go into Advent. We'll do the Thanksgiving sermon, then Advent, and then on to the new year. So we've only got two more sermons this fall in Genesis. And what we've been doing is we've been looking at, hopefully what you've been seeing is a very dysfunctional family. And the nice thing about this year, as we looked at the dysfunctional family, is that just maybe it'll make you feel a little bit better about your family. Let's cut it out again. A little bit better about your family going into Thanksgiving. You go, man, it could be worse. At least I didn't marry my cousin, or at least whatever it would be. But we've seen this dysfunctional family, and this is the story of Jacob. And so if you're just joining us, we've been looking at the story of Isaac and Rebekah, and Rebekah can't get pregnant. She gets pregnant, she gives birth to two sons, Jacob and Esau. And the prophecy was that the older would serve the younger. That's what they said before they even came out of the womb. God said the older is going to serve the younger. And as Esau is born, the older, as then Jacob is born, the twin, the second right on his heels, literally on his heels, is that the prophecy from even before birth is that the older is going to serve the younger. And so the story, the blessing, the promise that came to Abraham, the promise that came to Isaac was the promise that was going to go to Jacob. And Esau tried to fight that. Jacob tried to force that. And so Jacob tried to steal the blessing from Esau. And in doing so, Esau wanted to kill him. And so then Jacob's mom says, you need to go and you need to leave. And you go find my uncle, go find your uncle, my brother, go find your my brother, your uncle, and you stay with him until your brother doesn't want to kill you anymore. And I will send for you. And so then Jacob runs off. He meets Laban, his uncle. There he gets married to Leah. He gets married to Rachel. And then they have, between them and the servants, they have 11 sons and then a daughter. By the way, Jacob then he's going to have 12 sons total because Rachel later on is going to die in childbirth. We're giving birth to Benjamin. So there'll be 12 sons. Jacob's name is going to be changed to Israel. So we're not going to see that this fall. We'll see that next fall. But Jacob's name will be changed to Israel, and his 12 sons will be the 12 tribes of Israel. And remember, this story is being told to a people that came out as slaves out of Egypt. And so they're hearing their story and being written down their story, like, how did we come to be? And we all have those family secrets, right? We just want to bury. We want to bury, like, hey. And sometimes, there's those family secrets, and as kids get older, they go, hey, how does this relationship work? Like, yeah, we just don't talk about that in our family. We don't, what happened? Where did so-and-so? Who's his mom? Who's his dad? Like, yeah, we don't talk about that, right? And we have these family secrets. And your family has its secrets. And at this point, you should also be glad that your family secrets were not canonized in Scripture for people to read for thousands of years. And what I hopefully one of the things you've been seeing is that in the middle of this dysfunction, we see God's will prevail. And I think that a lot of times when we think about how can anything good come out of this, how can anything good come out of my dysfunctional family? How can anything come out of this dysfunctional relationship? Here's the beautiful thing. God has a long history of bringing out beautiful things out of dysfunction, things that are whole and healthy and beautiful out of dysfunctional, ugly, like messes. And that's the story. People, they read this story and they go, so this is what God needed to do to bring about his story? Like, no, he's saying, I can bring about my story despite these things. And so we've seen this great, wonderful, dysfunctional family. But do you know what's worse than having a dysfunctional family? Like an absolute dysfunctional family? Having to work with your dysfunctional family. right? It's one thing to have a dysfunctional family. It's another thing to have to and then we went in business together. Like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a reality show. Like so you guys are dysfunctional and then you guys, you work together. You go, yes. And that's the story of Jacob and Laban. This is a huge dysfunction. And they're working together. And this morning what we're going to see is the separation, is that Jacob is going to say, remember Rebecca had said, when your brother settles down, I will send for you, but stay there. Stay with your uncle Laban until then. And this morning what we're going to see Jacob himself say, I think now is the time to go. So if you got your Bibles, join me, and we're going to start in Genesis chapter 30, verse 25, and we're going to go down through 31:16 this morning. It says this: As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me away that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children from whom I have served you, that I may go. For you know the service that I have given you. But Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. Name your wages, and I will give it. Jacob said to him, you yourself know how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For you have had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now shall I provide for my own household also. And so he says, it's time for me to go. And interestingly enough, remember what? Rebecca had said, I will send for you. You stay there until I send for you. No word has come from Rebecca. No word that says, hey, Jacob, now is the time for you to return. Actually, Jacob is thinking, because I'm strong enough now, because my clan is big enough, I have enough. Remember, Jacob showed up with what? With nothing. He had nothing. He had no family. He had no children. He didn't have any wives. Nothing. He had no livestock. He had nothing. And now over time, it's going to be about 20 years or so, over time he's accumulated things. And now he's thinking, now that I'm strong enough, it's time for me to go back home. Rebecca has sent no word. And Jacob has I think here, especially here, has faithfully served Laban. And this is what he's saying. Like, Laban, Jacob's saying, you know that I have served you faithfully. And all Laban has done to him is lie, cheat, and steal. And what's Jacob's response? He serves him faithfully. Now, we wish this would always be Jacob's story. This is not always Jacob's story. But I think in this part of the narrative, as though Laban has cheated him, he's lied to him, he's stolen from him, is that actually Jacob has done, I think, his best to be faithful to him. And then what you see here is he says that you have I've had favor, and you've had favor because I've been with you. See, I think a lot of times the Christians specifically is that we are called to be this blessing to those around us. And this is what we see here. Laban saying, I am blessed. I have favor because you are with me and because God is with you. That's what he's saying. God is with you. You are with me. Because of that, I've seen favor. And I go, may that be. May that be our story. You see, our world's mantra is, if you mistreat me, I therefore get to mistreat you. And I go, that's our culture. And by the way, this is a long-standing cultural mantra. This is not unique to 2022. That if you mistreat me, that justifies my mistreatment to you. And you've done this you do this, I do this. Why'd you lie to them? They lied to me. Like, oh, okay. Why'd you steal from them? They stole from me first. Why did you slander them? I only slandered them because they slandered my name first. And so you go, oh, so their mistreatment of you has justified your mistreatment of them. No. I mean, that's the cultural mantra, but may it not be the people of God's mantra, is that although we are cursed, right, that we are a blessing in return. That you may lie for me, you may cheat for me, you may cheat me, you may steal from me, but that does not justify me lying and cheating and stealing from you. May we take the ill treatment. By the way, this doesn't mean that if you're in places of abuse or like that God's just like, yeah, just stick it out. But what it is saying is that even though you've experienced the injustice, even though you've experienced the abuse, it does not justify your response to do that to them. And this is what we see. This is what we see here. And by the way, this, Jacob, he's going to be one of the forerunners of Christ. And Christ is the perfect image of the one who took the mistreatment of the world and gave us what? The favor and blessing of God. I think one of the great fears right now among Christians, especially in America, especially in California, they go, Josh, there's coming a day we're being mistreated. I go, okay, first of all, let's just calm down, because I could actually show you what Christians being mistreated looks like in the world today. And it doesn't look like what we're experiencing in California. So that's part one. Part two is that even if that was true, the way that we are mistreated does not justify our mistreatment of them. For we follow a Jesus who was mistreated to the point of death. And what did he give us in return? Mistreatment? Injustice? No. He gave us blessing in the favor of God. And what we see here is he's saying, like, look, I understand that as long as you have been with me, I have seen it, you've seen it, everybody has seen it. It says seen it, is that you've gotten favor. And so he says, what do you want? Verse 31. He said, what shall I give you? Jacob said, you shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep and every black lamb and spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later. When you come to look into my wages with you, every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted as stolen. And so I love Laban. Laban's like, what shall I give you? For all of your years of work, what shall I give you? He's like, I don't want you to give me anything. I want you to get what I earned, right? This is like your boss would be like, hey, so what shall I give you in for the 40 hours you work this week? What shall I give you some money? Like, no, I have a salary. So I've earned, I've worked hard. You're not giving me anything. I don't want you to give me anything. I just want you to give me what I've earned. He said, I've worked really hard. I've pastured your flock. You didn't have a lot when I started. It's going to be like between 14 and 20 years ago. You didn't have much when I started. Now you have a ton. I just want what's mine. And so here's the deal. I'll walk through the flock. Anything that has sort of a mark on it, I get. If it has no mark on it, which would be the vast majority of them, then you get them. And so then later on, if something has a spot or a speckle, you know that it belongs to me. But if you walk through my flock and you see something without that, it belongs to you. It's really easy. You don't have to tag. They're already tagged. And so he's saying, I don't want you to give me anything. I'm just going to go through. Here's the deal. I go through. I take the lesser. I take the blemished ones even, and then you get all of the ones that are unblemished. Verse 34. Laban said, "Good. Let it be that you have said. Let it be as you have said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and he put them in the charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. Oh, Laban does as Laban does. Laban's like, good. So Jacob has like, here's the deal. Pass through, anything that's speckle on it, I take. No spot, no speckle, you take. Laban goes, good. Let's go. Yeah, great deal. Yeah, sounds great. Wonderful. And then what does he do? He charges his son, saying, I want you to take all of the spotted and speckled ones and get them out of here. I say you should be cautious when people that lack integrity are quick to make a deal with you. I was just with my friends up in Oregon, and we were just kind of hanging out, and when my friend came home, we were all going to go out to dinner together, and so we were just kind of sitting there waiting, and his one son, their middle child, he says to me, I don't know why he even said this, he goes, if you cannot talk until we go to McMenamins, I'll give you $20. I was like, am I talking a lot? Like, am I talking that much? Or like, if you could, but this is like, you have to know the kid. Like, he's a lot of fun. And this is his thing. He's always thinking about like, games and deals. And so he said, yeah, he said, I bet you can't not talk until we get to McMenamins, the place we were going to eat at. And so then I said, oh, so you'll give me $20 if I cannot talk until I see McMenamins? And he says, yes. I said, deal. He says, all right. So then I just Googled McMenamins on the screen because I was on my computer. I said, so we're good, right? And he's like, no. He said, you talked. You owe me $20. I'm like, no, McMenamins, I see McMenamins on my screen. He was like, and to his credit, he stormed upstairs, got his $20, and brought it back down. I know, and I said, thank you, buddy, thank you, that's good. So no, I said, I'm not going to take your $20, but know this, be careful when somebody, with wording of things, when you're entering into a deal with somebody, be careful how they word it, and be careful if they are too quick to go, yeah, I'm good, that sounds good, yep, you're like, okay, something going on. And a lot of my nieces and nephews, they know that, like, man, if Josh is quick, he's worded it some way. Now, Laban in this story, he says, good, and what does he do? He takes everything out, sends it 3 days away. Verse 37, then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees, and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks and the troughs, that is the watering places, where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks. And so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock, he would not lay them there. So the feebler would be Laban's, and the stronger is Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly and had large flocks, female servants, male servants, and camels and donkeys. And so Jacob does not seem to be fazed by this. So I don't think that he's surprised that Laban has done something of ill repute, that he has been shady at best. He doesn't seem to be fazed by it. He goes, oh yeah, so I had anticipated this. And then he brings in all of the sheep and the goats, and then he peels off woods, and then the ones that have striped wood, they have spots, and the ones that has plain woods, they don't have spots. So at this point, you're probably like, what in the heck is happening here? And by the way, I read lots of commentaries this week on this very subject, on this story. And, some of them were like, well, who knew and what knew? And then that Jacob knew about recessive genes, and then 25%. I was like, I don't know about any of that. What I do know is that actually in the following part of the story is that I don't think that Jacob thinks that what's causing the spotted and the speckled is the wood. And so I don't think that Jacob's like, oh, well, look at how this works. Oh my gosh, what sort of magic is happening here? Because we'll actually find out in the next part of this story. It's actually, he knows. It's actually because of the God. It's not because of the wood that this is happening. It's quite possible that he wants Laban to think that it's because of the wood that this is happening. And so it's almost like this smoke screen a little bit. He's like, I want actually what I want is I want Laban to think. And the cool thing is that Jacob really is, at some level, he is being, like, he's using his own, like, ingenuity. Because he is selectively breeding, right? He's like, oh, the stronger ones are going to go over here. The weaker ones are going to go over here. And lo and behold, the stronger ones went to Jacob. And the weaker ones, they went to Laban. And what we see is this idea that human ingenuity, and this human ingenuity, it meets divine intervention. And so I think that at this point, that he knows that Laban's going to lie to him. He knows that God is involved. And so he does this little human ingenuity, but it's this human ingenuity with divine intervention. And I think that's a lot of times where we find ourselves in this place of, like, human ingenuity and divine intervention. And a lot of times people are like, well, which one is it? I go, it's both. I know people that are like all divine intervention and they do nothing. They use that, like, divine intervention to be apathetic, disengaged, and lazy. It's like, oh, yeah, well, God's going to do what God's going to do, so I don't have to do anything. You're like the spouse that's like, do you want me to wash the dishes? Yeah, like, really? Like, really? Like, well, if I leave them long enough, maybe somebody else will wash them. Like, no, you actually are supposed to do something. And a lot of people think because of divine intervention, because God's going to do what he's going to do, that I don't matter. My actions don't matter. I go, false. That's not true. The other people fall on the other end of just human ingenuity, and they go, man, if I don't do something, God's not going to do anything. I go, no, that's wrong too. We are actually supposed to be like this in a sense. We're supposed to be actively engaged, using our brains, knowing the world. Like, he knows Laban. He's not dumb to Laban. He's wise to Laban. He's hip to Laban. But he's not going to take the spot of God. And I think a lot of times your frustration is when, one, either you don't do what you can do, or two, you try to do what only God can do. And really, the truth be told, is what we're called to do is we're called to be faithful, be obedient. It's our job to do those things. So God, never once would God be like, hey, kick back, relax, put your feet up. I got all of this, guys. Like, he's constantly, the Great Commission he gives as Jesus is going, he does not say, hey, no, yes, do whatever. I'm coming back, so all work itself out. What does he say? No, go into the world, be active, do these things. But know this, that you do not go alone, that I go with you. And then we read the stories that in the Bible, the disciples, they are doing what they're called to do. They're going, making disciples. And then we see God in his divine intervention doing only what he can do. And so there's these places of, is it human ingenuity or is it divine intervention? I go, no, it's both. And even though Laban tries to thwart the plan, Jacob still prospers. Chapter 31, verse 1. Now Jacob heard that what the sons of Laban were saying, that Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what it was ours, our father's, he has gained all his wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. Let me read that again. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from that what was our father's, he has gained all his wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you. Oh, the irony. What's the refrain of Laban's sons? That Jacob. It's all ill-gotten. I mean, what Jacob was saying is that, so even when everything shakes out, you'll know that I did this honestly. And then Jacob does as Jacob does, and then his Laban's sons come back and go, oh, that trickster, he has taken everything from us. Oh, the irony. Have you ever noticed this? That those who lie, cheat, and steal are the first ones to protest the fact that people are lying and cheating and stealing from them. The ones who lie, they're the first ones to protest that someone may lie to them. And do you know one of the reasons why I think this is true is because they see it. They see it because that's the way that they see the world. You know, we say the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you'd have others do unto you, right? That's the golden rule. So do unto others as others you'd have others do unto you. And the idea is that if you'd want someone to be nice to you, you're nice to them because you treat them as you'd want to be treated. And the truth is, at the end of the day, whether explicitly or implicitly, we always expect people to respond the way in which we would respond, right? So if you're nice to somebody and they're mean to you, you go, "What? I was nice to them." Or you tell to somebody the truth and then they lie to you, you go, "What? Like I was generous with them and then they are greedy with me." And so we expect people to respond to us the way that we respond to them. Now there's this downside to that, which is, by the way, if you lie, cheat, and steal, whether explicitly or implicitly, you actually expect other people to lie, cheat, and steal from you. See, what happens a lot of times, this is sort of a side note here, but what happens a lot of times is, we'll take for instance, like somebody that lies to you. They lie to you, and you know what you think to yourself because you're an honest person? They lie to you. You know what you think? You think to yourself, how dare they lie to me, and they're getting away with it. And I go, here's the crazy thing. They're not getting away with anything. They lie. Do you know what they assume that other people are doing to them? Lying to them. Even when you're telling them the truth, they assume that you're lying to them. Why? Because that's what they would do to you. I mean, the same example would be like the person who is unfaithful in a relationship, they're the first one to accuse the other person of infidelity. Why? Because that's what they're doing. And so here we see the sons, they're like, oh, Jacob, lying and cheating and stealing from us. How can you think that? Because you have lied and cheated and stolen from him. And then he falls out of favor. Did you see that? When Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Now, why didn't Laban regard him with favor as before? Because his flocks weren't increasing anymore. Do you know what happens in dysfunctional relationships? And with dysfunctional people? Is as soon as you stop benefiting them, the relationship will break down. I've seen it too many times. I've experienced it too many times. That when in dysfunctional relationships with a dysfunctional person, when you stop benefiting them, the relationship will break down. I'm in good favor with them. Why? Because you benefit them. And the moment you stop benefiting them, the relationship will break down. You've experienced this. A lot of us in this room, we've done this. What happened to that relationship? Well, it stopped becoming advantageous to me, and so it breaks down. But by the way, like one of the mantras right now with dating is what? Hey, kind of like this, hey, you do you, I do me, and as long as you do you and I do me, and that works out together, then we're good. I go, no, that's dysfunction. It says as long as you're benefiting me and I'm benefiting you, we're in a relationship together. But the second you don't benefit me anymore, I don't benefit you, then we just go our separate ways. They go, that's dysfunction. And what we see here is that Laban, he stops benefiting from him, and so the relationship breaks down. And by the way, this is why it's so hard to work for the approval of people. Because this is true. You sacrifice so much, you do so much just to get somebody's approval, and then the second you don't do that or you do something different, you lose their approval. People are fickle. And the beautiful thing about Jacob is that Jacob actually had the approval of God before he even showed up. He gets the approval of Laban because he has the approval of God. But even after the approval of Laban goes away, guess what's still there? The approval of God. This is why the approval of men is so fickle. But he shows up with the approval of God. Lots of crazy stuff happens. He leaves. Although he's lost favor of everybody else, he has not lost favor with God. That's what he says, I'm with you. And then what does he say? It's time for you to go. Return to the land of your fathers, to your kindred, and I will be with you. Notice this. It's not because Rebekah sent him. It's not because Laban said, get out of here. And it's not because Jacob says it's time to go. When is it time to go? It's time to go when God says, it's time to go. Like that's how it works. So now the returning is just one out of obedience. Verse 4. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before. But, I love this, but the God of my father has been with me. And you know that I have served your father with all of my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. And so he pulls in together two of Laban's daughters and says, look, your dad has cheated me 10 times. And the idea of 10 times here is like, it's not necessarily 10 times, but it could be like, he's cheated me dozens of times. That's the idea. It's like every chance he's gotten to cheat me, he cheated me because that's what Laban does. That's what your dad does. He's cheated me every chance that he's got. And I served him faithfully. And I love what it says here is that God allowed the cheating, right? But he prohibited the harming. That's what it says. He cheated me 10 times. 10 times. And you know that I've served him. But God did not permit him to harm me. It pulls up this weird idea that God permits certain things and allows other things. And I think a lot of times, even my own personal life and in talking with people, that becomes one of the questions. Josh, how do we know what does God permit, what does he allow, and what does he prohibit? What does he permit and what does he prohibit? And one of your questions is wrestling with God has always been that. God, why did you permit this but prohibit this? And a lot of times, actually, we just drop the prohibit. We go, God, why did you allow this to happen? Why did you allow this to happen? Why did you allow this to happen? Without giving much thought to what maybe he prohibited. So God, why did you let all this happen? And God's thinking, well, actually, the plan was that it would be far worse. But actually, I prohibit it from going far worse. And one of the most classic examples we get of this is the story of Job, right? The story of Job. Satan comes to Job and Satan comes to God and says, have you seen Job? And Satan says, Job only loves you because you've given him everything. And God says, you can take away everything, but you cannot take his life, right? So allowed. So God didn't take it all away, but God allowed it to be taken away, but prohibits it, says you cannot take his life. And so then Job loses everything. He loses basically all of his money. He loses his children. But he does not lose his life. He loses his health, but he does not lose his life. And probably as we know from the scriptures, there's multiple times that Job actually wishes that God would take his life. God says, so basically he says, I've allowed all of this, but I prohibited him from Satan taking your life. And Job comes to the place, he goes, just no, like don't prohibit that. Like just let it all, like just allow everything to happen because then I would die. And truth be told is I don't know. I've been trying to figure out, there's no formula and equation of why does God allow certain things. Why did he allow Jacob to be cheated but prohibited him from being harmed? I don't know. I wish I had the answer, but I don't. But I know this, is that there are people in this world that want to harm you. But your God is a good God who's in control. And maybe that's the prayer for you. If you're like, God, why did you allow? God, why did you allow? I think part of that is just remembering is that he has allowed, yes, but he's prohibited something worse. And in that allowing, God, I don't know why you've allowed this. I don't know why you've allowed this. But would you help me heal through this and limit its effects on me? And so he says, he's stolen from me. He's stolen from me, but he did not harm me. Verse 8. And this is what Jacob says. If he said, referring to Laban, if he said the spotted shall be your wages, then the flock bore spotted. And if he said the striped shall be your wages, then the flock bore stripes. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of the God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And he said, lift up your eyes and see all of the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise and go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred. And so Jacob, as he's talking to the daughters of Laban, his wives, he says, hey, here's the deal. No matter what Laban had said, like that's what came out. If Laban said stripe came out. If Laban said spotted came out. If Laban would have said like purple would have come out, because whatever he said, God was going to make this happen. And so we see this place that no matter what he does, and this is one of the major ideas I think has been of the fall. Like as we've been talking about the fall in Genesis, that no matter what happens, God's will is going to move forward. Remember before when Jacob and Esau, they were fighting and Jacob deceived his dying dad to get the blessing, because it was like, what happens if Esau comes back and gets the blessing? And then we get to this story and Jacob's like, yeah, like I'm doing what I do, but at the end of the day, like there's nothing that Laban could do to thwart the plan of God. God has blessed me, and if I'm going to leave here with sheep, I'm leaving here with sheep no matter what Laban says or does. That's the Jacob that we were lacking back with Esau. We say, oh my gosh, we have to lie, cheat, and steal to get the blessing. Now he's like, no, we don't have to lie, cheat, and steal to get the blessing, because no matter what Laban says, no matter what Laban does, I'm going to get the sheep, because God is going to see to it. It's the problem right now, especially with, I think a lot within Christianity, is that we're buying into the ends justifies the means argument. Why can we say that? Why can we do that? Because if we don't say that, if we don't do that, do you know what's going to happen? Which I want to say, because I want to say, they know. I go, you don't know. I don't know. The ends justifies the means is, for the Christian, by the way, for the Christian, the ends justifies the mean is always a fool's game, because it does not work. Why? Because you're not responsible for the ends, but you are responsible for the means. You see, what happened before with Jacob and Esau is that Jacob was saying the ends justify the means. Sure, I'm going to lie and deceive my dying dad, but I'll get the blessing, which is what God wanted. The ends justifies the means. And here we actually see Jacob say, no, the ends don't justify the means. Actually, the means are my control. It's what I can do. But the ends, these are God's, like this is what God is over. And so it says this, that God says, I have seen all that Laban has done to you, and I have made it right. I've seen everything that Laban has done to you for those 20 years. I've seen him lie to you. I've seen him cheat you. I've seen him steal for you. And guess what God does? God makes it right. You see, what we want is when you suffer any sort of injustice, you want God. What do you want from God? God, make it right. Make it right. And do you know one of the reasons why your ends justify your means is because you think, okay, this is what it means to make this situation right. God, I have suffered these things, these sorts of things. I have suffered them, and here's what it looks like to make it right. And because, of course, this is not within your will, but it will accomplish what you want to accomplish, which is making it right. And it's made right because I look at it and I go, that's right. We're so arrogant. We are so arrogant people. So much arrogance. Anyways, so we do this, and God's like, no, I am the maker of the right. I've seen every injustice, and here's what you want. Every one of us in this room. We want God to make those things that have come against us. We want God to make them right. And here's the beautiful thing. He does. See, we read a story like this, and we go, oh, look at this. God is the righter of wrongs, that God is the defender of Jacob. I want God to do that for me. Why can't God in my life right my wrongs? Why can't God defend me like this? People try to cheat me, and God's like, yeah, good luck with that. You're not going to cheat my boy. You're not going to cheat my gal. Like, you're not going to do it. Why can't God do that for me? Here's the crazy thing. How long has this been happening? 20 years. How many of y'all want to wait 20 years for the justice of God? Nope. They were like, nope. Because this is what happens, right? God, I really want you to defend me, and I want you to right all of the wrongs that have happened to me. And you've got 20 hours, right? Yeah. And go. All right, so it's Tuesday. Okay, Lord, obviously you're not moving, so I will then, as justify this as means, I will bring about my own justice. I will make this right. And God says, no, once again, you don't need to continually put yourself in places that you're going to be lied to and cheated and cheated from and stolen, cheated on and stolen from. But this idea that you bring about your own justice, no, God is the righter of wrongs. God is your defender. And sometimes that may take 20 years. Here's a crazy thing that happened to me recently. That I actually suffered, I'm not going into detail, but a while ago, suffered that I go, man, I feel like that was an injustice. And I had totally forgotten about it. Until one day at a lunch, like this injustice that happened over here, one day at this lunch, somebody totally out of the blue started making it right. And here's the crazy thing. I thought to myself, I forgot about that. I mean, when like we were talking about it, but I never thought like, God, could you bring justice to this guy? Could you right this wrong? God, could you do this? I just had stopped praying that. And I was like, I had totally forgotten about that. And I feel like God was like, yeah, but I didn't, right? And God's like, I didn't forget about it. Why? Because he's our defender. He's the one that rights the wrongs. This is, by the way, one of the core beliefs of Christianity. One of the core beliefs of Christianity is that God takes on the injustice of the world and makes the wrong right. That's what the cross is all about. The cross is the injustice all poured out onto Jesus, and what does he give us in return? His justice. Justified, reconciled. And so God is your defender. God will right the wrongs. It may take 20 years. You may be after your lifetime, but God, this is one of the things we hold true, that God will right every wrong. And so he says, I've seen what Laban's done to you. And then he says, see what I've done, know who I am, right? I am the God. I am the God of Bethel. I'm the same God. I know what Laban's been doing to you. I'm the God of Bethel. Now go and rise. See what I did. Know that I am God. Be obedient. See that I am God. Like, see what I did. Know that I am God. Be obedient. I go, really, that's sort of like the math of faith. Faith is the trust, the active trust and belief in the promises of God. And he goes, see what I've done. Know that I'm God. Now go and do. And I go, that's faith. People talk about blind faith. You can have blind faith. Just have blind faith, Josh. I'm like, no, we're not actually required to have blind faith. Every single time, God's like, no. I'm asking you to have faith. Trust in me. Trust in me. Trust that I will do my promises. Trust that I will do what I have said I would do. And you can do that by doing this. Reflect on what I've done. Know who I am and be obedient. That's the faith part, is being obedient. This is why actually as you grow in faith, one of the reasons you can grow in faith because God has done more for you. And now even when I doubt, I'm like, I don't know, God. God's like, think about all of the things I've already done for you. I go, oh yeah, that's true. That's true. And what you've already done for me, I reflect upon that. I reflect upon who you are. It gives me the confidence and the endurance to be obedient. He says, see what I've done, know who I am, and I want you to be obedient. And then verse 14. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, is there any portion of our inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us, and he has indeed devoured our money. All of the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. So remember, he's gathered the wives together and said, hey, look, this is what your dad's done to me. And what's their response? Oh, he's done that to us too. Yeah. Your dad lied to me, he cheated me, and he stole from me. And they go, so we know him. Yeah, he did that to us too. Dysfunction has a way of being, dysfunction is never, by the way, it's never isolated to one relationship. That's the problem with it. It's like it's in every relationship. And the reason why I say like when is this important is because when you think about dysfunction like this in your life, it can feel so personal. Why do they cheat from me? Like because they're a cheater. You know, why do they steal from me? Because they're a thief. That's why. But it can feel so personal. And what's happening here is like, is this personal to Jacob? No, it's not personal to Jacob. Because the wife's like, he's done that to us. Some of the bride price that would have been paid, the hours that Jacob had given, that was actually to return to them at some point. Like, no, he took all of that and used it for whatever he wanted to use it for. And so, God has taken from him, he's given to you, but he's also taken from him and given to us. And so we should go now. And so as we're going to see in the next story, actually, it's going to be Jacob and his clan leaving Laban. And what we see here is that as this dysfunction spirals out of control, is that God brings justice to those who are harmed by it. May that be the prayer of thanksgiving. God, would you bring favor to me even though I'm in the midst of dysfunction? God, would you be a blessing to me and help me be a blessing to others even though people are not that to me? God, would you help right the wrongs because that's who you do. God, and I have enough faith in you, enough belief and trust in you that I can pray that prayer for 20 years. Trusting that one day, maybe one day out of the blue, but it'll be one day that you will right all of the wrongs. And you'll bring justice because you are my defender. There's a great temptation to defend yourselves. In our increasingly polarized culture, there's a great temptation to defend yourself. I don't need to defend myself. I've got a defender. He's God, and he's much better at it than I put up healthy boundaries, right? Put up healthy boundaries. But at the end of the day, I'm not my own defender. You're not your own defender. God is your defender. In an increasingly polarized world, people feel like, if I don't fight for me, who will? I go, you have one who has already fought for you. He already fought for you and he won. And that God, that's the same God that is the God of Jacob, the God of Isaac, the God of Abraham, the God of the disciples, the God of you. And he'll bring about the same sort of justice in this time. Let's pray. God, we thank you for your goodness. We thank you for your power. God, I think about in this room all of the ways in which individually, collectively, that we have suffered some sort of injustice. And where maybe our refrain has been, why have you allowed? Why did you allow? Why did you allow? Why are you allowing? And God, we just know that you're a good God who's in control. We thank you for what you've prohibited, even if we don't see it. And we pray that you would bring justice to our situation. God, we pray out of the dysfunction that is our family, that you would bring something whole and healthy, beautiful, of integrity, and that you would be glorified. That the curses that come to us, that we would be able to respond with blessing. As we fall in and out of favor of those around us, that may we not fall in and out of your favor. And that you would be glorified. We love you. We pray for these things in your name. Amen. Amen.